Greetings, Ohio Valley. This is Dan Lima with OSU Extension from Belmont County.
And this is Karen Cox from WVU Extension in Ohio County. Thanks for tuning in to Extension Calling, your source for research-based information for the farm, garden, and home. Hey friends, we need your help. In order to help keep this show going, we need to hear back from you. Please take some time and check out our evaluation. Let us know if you like the show, and especially let us know if you've used any of the information you've gained from our show. Once again, you can reach us directly. You can call Karen at 304-234-3673. That's 304-234-3673. Or you can reach Dan at 740-695-1455. That's 740-695-1455.
Hello, Karen.
Hey, Dan.
I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
I hope you did as well.
Yes, and I know a lot of times the holidays can be kind of tough on people, so we just want to send a reminder to everybody to, reach out to your loved ones. November is also the month for Veterans Day, so reach out to any family members or friends that you have overseas. Get in touch with them, let them know that you're thinking about him or her, and just always keep them in your mind. The holidays are a wonderful time to reach out to loved ones.
That's right. And if you don't have anyone you can contact directly, recognize that the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a simple number. It is 988. And if you are having suicidal thoughts, to please reach out to someone and talk. 988 is a quick, easy number to remember. And it is okay to be struggling. And I think we need to take away the stigma surrounding people who are struggling during the holidays. There are seasonal depression disorders. There are, a lot, like Dan had mentioned, our military friends and family. PTSD is a thing. And even if you haven't been in the military, you can have PTSD. And so it's really important to recognize in yourself when you need help and to take that step to reach out for it.
Yeah, and I didn't want to get too deep into it, but it is that time of year and it's something that we should think about. So take that extra time, and here's what happens in the holidays. You're so busy, you're running around, you're having a good time. You forget to just reach out to people that could really use that. So, do your part as well. And when everything's great, just reach out to friends and loved ones and just say hello. And I'm thinking about you.
Yeah. And sometimes that's all it takes, just that couple seconds to say, hey, just wanted to let you know I was thinking about you. Hope you're doing okay. And then that can be the difference for someone. So be there, be able to listen, and take some time for those who might need a little bit of extra understanding.
Yeah.
Something that people also tend to ignore during these colder months is that ticks are still active. A lot of people think they go to sleep for the winter, and they absolutely do not, especially as our winters become less extreme. They're still out there, they're still active, and you still need to be aware and take precautions.
That's right. So ticks will go not dormant, but they will slow down. Their metabolism slows. But on those warm days in November and December, a lot of people hunting, ticks are going to be active. So just do your part and check for ticks. If you have the ability to use some arachnicides, chemicals that will either deter ticks or kill ticks, stuff like permethrin.
Hey, wait a minute. What do you mean arachnicide?
You're right. Arachnocide is a big, scary word. Ticks are actually classified more in the arachnid family, more into the spider world than they are in the insect world.
People out there are going, oh, that's why I hate them so much.
And there's different physiology in insects and spiders, which we also call arachnids. And when you're looking at pesticides that will kill arachnids versus insects, a lot of times it's different chemicals. Sometimes the same chemical does both, but not always. So it's very important to check the label and make sure that you are using a chemical properly, and it will give you the protection that you need. But that's what I meant by arachnicides. And thank you for stopping me there.
Glad to help.
And that goes for things like deer ticks and dog ticks and things like that. Deer ticks specifically have been known to carry Lyme disease. So that is something that you should always be aware of and check for ticks. And one of the recommendations is if you have a lot of ticks on you, especially like a lot of black-legged ticks or deer ticks, they're also called. If you have a lot of nymphs that have embedded themselves on you, go to urgent care and just let them know that, and they could give you a dose of antibiotics to prevent Lyme disease. If it's just one tick that you've found, it's up to you how you want to proceed, but it's always going to be a risk. So just make sure that you're protecting yourself.
Right. And deer ticks aren't the only ones that have diseases. The dog tick, which is common in grassy, well-mowed areas, it carries Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which can have a lot of the same initial symptoms, flu-like symptoms following a bite. And again, a lot of times we don't know that we've been bitten until we start showing symptoms, and we may have a little red mark but not have any rashes or anything. So do keep an eye on your symptoms. If you've been in an area where you may have been exposed to ticks, keep an eye on your symptoms for a couple weeks afterwards, just to get that extra level of precaution. And we also need to start looking at symptoms on our animals too.
That's right. So there is a tick threat that's out there, the Asian longhorn tick. I know we've mentioned the Asian longhorn beetle, but this is the Asian longhorn tick. So it is a tick species, has origins in Southeast Asia, has been causing some issues in New Zealand, and was introduced to the United States in 2017 on sheep, but has also been confirmed in Ohio in 2021. And at least 11 counties in the state of Ohio have been positive for the Asian longhorn tick, one of which is Belmont County, where I am. And it is also on the other side of the river. And I want to say it's even more prevalent in West Virginia, because you're going to find a lot of Asian longhorn tick pressure in areas of Western Virginia into West Virginia, and now coming into Ohio as well.
Yeah, in West Virginia, I don't know the exact number, but approximately half of the counties have confirmed the Asian longhorn ticks. So it's here.
And a little bit more information on the Asian longhorn tick, why it's such a threat. As far as human diseases go, nothing has been confirmed that the Asian longhorn tick transmits disease to humans, nor is there necessarily a preference for humans for this tick. But that doesn't mean that it can't harbor any human diseases, and that doesn't mean that it can't feed on humans. It's been reported to feed on sheep, goats, horses, cattle, chickens, dogs, cats, and humans as well, even though we don't think it's a preference for this tick.
I just realized that we should have done this as a Halloween episode, because this is terrifying stuff.
Oh, I haven't even gotten to the scary part yet.
Oh.
But as far as a threat goes, this tick is unique in that females can reproduce without mating, and one female can lay up to 2,000 eggs at a time. So if you think about it, you have one female, she's reproducing clonally, so she's laying eggs without mating, 2,000 of them. That means you have 2,000 females, and those 2,000 ticks are then laying 2,000 more eggs each, and you can see how it can exponentially grow. Well, in the past couple of years, we've had instances where we have entire cows and, well, entire adult cattle. So sometimes it was a bull, sometimes it was a cow, where they were completely exsanguinated. So there were enough ticks on this animal to drain them of enough blood to kill them. So it did not die of a disease, but in the cases that I'm referring to, the tick pressure was so great, and if you take a 1,500-pound animal, just imagine the sheer number of ticks that it takes to completely bleed out this animal. So it died of blood loss.
Oh, vampires.
Yeah, so that's right. We should be doing this in October, but you know what? Better sooner than later. We probably should have done it a while back, but it's okay. I mean, it's information now.
We've mentioned it a couple different shows.
We have.
So, I mean, it's not like we've been ignoring this. It's been around for a few years.
And that's not what I meant. But it's something that livestock owners, especially cattle owners, should be aware of. And, there's ways to prevent this tick from affecting your farm operation, your cattle operation, your sheep operation. We're not just talking to the cattle guys here. We're talking to all livestock people. One of the best things you can do is just to have preventative tick measures in your livestock. So whenever you're bringing in animals onto your farm, so you're bringing in some replacement heifers, or let's say you're buying you're buying some new genetics, you're bringing in a bull, you're bringing in a cow. With this type of pressure, especially where the animal came from, just that in itself is really important to know. Keep the animal in quarantine for a week or two. Watch the animal, check it for ticks, do the pour-ons, do the ear tags. One thing about the Asian longhorn tick is that it is susceptible to most products like permethrin and other products, and sometimes other parasites as well. So contact your vet, have that relationship, get a program that works for you and your farm, and make sure you implement it. And don't just introduce new cattle without checking them for this tick, especially if they come from an area that has a high rate of this tick. It's just good biosecurity to know that, and you take measures. I'm not saying don't buy new cattle from that area, but obviously take the precautions, isolate them, give them treatment, utilize your ear tags, utilize your pour-ons. Sometimes those rubbers are a great way to do it, but you're going to have to make sure that because this tick can reproduce so quickly, that you stay on top of it, that you don't just do it once and forget about it, because that chemical does have an activity that is usually 2 or 3 weeks. And then depending on what you're using, you might have to reapply. So stay on top of it and then just keep your animal safe. Now, I did say that this tick hasn't been shown to carry any human diseases. It does have a disease that will affect livestock, and that disease is Theileria. Some people call it Theileria, but Theileria is a tick-borne protozoa, and it's a protozoa that is found in the Asian longhorn tick at this point. And what this protozoa does is it attacks red and white blood cells, and it causes symptoms similar to anaplasmosis, and that the animal will become very lethargic. You can imagine if you start using red blood cells that carry oxygen and do different parts of the metabolism on the animal, they're always going to look like they have respiratory symptoms. They're going to be very lethargic, and if that animal is carrying a calf, that calf will be stressed. If it is a calf, obviously that animal is smaller and it's going to have more severe symptoms. So it can be fatal. And Theileria is something that is harbored by the Asian longhorn tick. We have found instances of Theileria in the state, but not all the Asian longhorn ticks had Theileria associated with it. But there's no cure for Theileria. It's not always fatal, but it is something that could really devastate your herd. You can have a significant loss to your animals. It's going to reduce their gain. It's going to cause a stress and herd health issues, which will then cause you to spend more money, and you're going to have smaller calves. And, if your animals get sick enough, then you can't even market that, because you should never market a sick animal. It's just going to cause a major issue in your profit margins. So the Asian longhorn tick is something that's really serious, and Theileria is a disease associated specifically with this tick. And the biggest recommendation is to make sure to keep the Asian longhorn tick out of your farm. And the best way to do so is to have biosecurity measures, such as isolating new animals that are coming into the farm. Have a very good tick prevention program. have a relationship with your vet. That way, if you do get an animal and it is isolated, and let's say it's looking a little lethargic, or at least you suspect it, there are tests to test for Theileria, and then you won't introduce that animal to the herd and possibly spread it.
Right. And so when you're inspecting your animals for ticks, you want to really give them a good once over. Use your hands to feel for weird bumps, check their udders or any joint areas where it might be a little bit more protected because they'll tend to gather there initially. But when you get an infestation and you have a lot of ticks on your livestock, you should really reach out to a veterinarian and get their guidance and assistance. They can help you identify the tick, they can help you remove the ticks, and they can also help you to identify what products you can use on your animals to protect them and to deal with the problem initially. And of course, if any of you out there are organic certified, always reach out to your certifying agency before you use any products on your livestock.
And the Asian longhorn tick, it doesn't have any specific markings necessarily. It's just like this almost coffee ground color, brown. And if you have instances of tick infestate, like ticks on your animals that are just extraordinarily high number of ticks, chances are it's probably Asian longhorn tick, because that's the trend that we see with this tick. It's not just a few ticks here and there. It's thousands to hundreds of thousands of ticks. And definitely check the areas that have less hair, that the tick can get better access to blood flow, such as the udders, such as the ears, the groin area, tail, underneath the legs.
So there's actually a really great video on YouTube that OSU produced, or OSU Extension, and it's actually Oklahoma State University Extension. So not you guys, Dan.
Oh man, I was all excited there for a second.
But yeah, it is for checking cattle for ticks, and he goes through the steps. You need to put the animal in the chute and take a look at different locations on the animal, and they kind of just walk you through it. It is a really short video, but definitely worth your time. So it's OSU Extension checking cattle for ticks on YouTube, and that's a really, really good resource available. And even if you don't have cattle, a lot of the locations that they point out and the instructions are going to be able to be transferred to a lot of other livestock as well.
Yeah, and this tick does like to live in pasture, and it really likes overgrown, mature pastures. So it's not just working with your animals, but it's also some pasture management as well. One of the things that you can do is just kind of make sure that you don't put out all your animals in very mature pasture. One, you're not going to get the quality, but brush control in this case, and for all ticks in general, are just a great way to keep the numbers lower. The higher the grass, the higher the moisture there at the base of the grass and the soil line. And that high moisture level is something that the ticks like, whether they're actually breeding at that point or whether they're just waiting. Putting your animals out on pastures that are not overly mature is a good way to make sure that you at least make the conditions not ideal for this tick to find quick access to an animal and then reproduce at those high numbers that could potentially kill an animal just by the tick feeding alone, not to mention the risk of the disease associated with the Asian longhorn tick, which again is Theileria, which is a disease that affects the red blood cells and the white blood cells. You're going to see symptoms that are similar to respiratory distress, where the animal's not getting oxygen because the animal really isn't getting oxygen because the red blood cells aren't there to carry it to the vital tissues. So when you're looking at this, I know it's scary and it's a lot, but just start thinking about this stuff earlier than later, because it's easier to prevent it than it is trying to get rid of it.
We had a guest back in March of this year. So it was March 26, 2023. Tim McDermott from Ohio State Extension came on the show and talked a lot about why ticks are an issue, and also talked about how they prefer to live and what growing conditions and things like that. So if you want more information about where ticks prefer to live and grow and what you can do as far as environmental controls and as far as the different ticks that are out there and what their problems are. That's a great show. It's called Ticks More Than a Nuisance. And it was from March 26, 2023 on Extension Calling. And so, our show.
And if you're not sure what that is, just keep listening.
And so before we run out of time, I did want to talk a little bit about just some pretty standard things you can do to protect yourself. And I wanted to advertise a website that is really helpful because we get a lot of calls to say, hey, will this work for tick prevention? And the EPA has put together a website that you can type in what you're trying to protect yourself from and what your preferred chemical is. Most of the calls are for about essential oils. And will this essential oil work for this? And so like citronella oil, for example, okay for mosquitoes, not effective for ticks. Oil of lemon and eucalyptus is effective on ticks, but only in certain formulations. So just because it has oil of lemon eucalyptus in it doesn't mean it's A, strong enough to work for ticks, or B, it's in a formula that can be effective. And you should also know that this particular product, while it can be effective, should not be applied to anyone under the age of 3 or 3 and under. So, there are some other restrictions. Even though it is an essential oil, recognize that just because it's natural doesn't necessarily mean it's safer. So do pay attention to that. And it's EPA. If you go to EPA.gov and search insect repellents and find the repellent right for you, insect repellents, find the right repellent, you'll get to this searchable website. And it really has a lot of great information on it. And I do recommend checking it out. They also have instructions on how to apply permethrin to your clothes. Remember, you should never apply permethrin directly to your body, but you should apply it wearing gloves to your clothes and let all of your clothes completely dry before handling them without gloves. And if you have cats, do not allow your cats to go near the area where you are spraying permethrin because they are very susceptible to this chemical before it has dried. So make sure that you are paying attention, read the entire label. Even though it's not something you're spraying on a crop or in your yard, it is still a pesticide and you are still required to read the entire label and follow its instructions. And make sure that you're reading what happens if I get it in my eyes section before you actually get it in your eyes so that you kind of know what to do ahead of time. It's a very, very often overlooked step because we're in a hurry and we feel like we already know everything. But it is so important to read the label on a chemical, even if you used it multiple times. You're required to do it. It is the law.
Yes. And that goes for chemicals that are safe to use in livestock. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can use it on all animals like Karen was suggesting. So read the label, consult your vet, get that relationship going. Your vet will help you develop a program that makes sense. But now is the time to start thinking about this stuff. If you just haven't done much in terms of tick control and parasite control in your livestock, now is the time to start thinking about it, because I would say it's a greater threat now than it has been in probably forever. So it's probably the greatest threat now that we've seen. But keep those biosecurity measures in place. Quarantine livestock. Just keep any new animal you're bringing onto your farm separate from the herd for a couple of weeks. Watch it, run it through the chute, check it for ticks, make sure everything looks good, make sure the animal looks healthy. If you suspect anything or the animal just doesn't look right, call your local vet. The vet can come and test the animal for certain diseases, give it a look through, get another set of eyes on it. And then once that animal is cleared, introduce it to your livestock and keep things going. Like I said, at this point, with the Asian longhorn tick, ear tags and pour-ons and rubbers that will help introduce some of these chemicals that will get rid of ticks at the proper time is going to be essential with the Asian longhorn tick management, especially if it becomes a problem in our area. It is here, so have that in the back of your mind when you're when you're purchasing animals and bringing them in. And I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't, but it's something else that we have to deal with and actually take a little bit more money, a little bit more time, and have these programs in place so that your farm doesn't get hit with a really hard problem that can really affect your herd health and your bottom line on top of all that.
That's right. Yeah. And having that vet relationship, I can't stress the importance of that enough. Having that relationship with your large animal vet ahead of time before you have a problem is so critical, because they know you, they know your operation, they know how your livestock behave typically and what steps you take. Keep a lot of records, talk to your vet regularly, and keep that relationship alive and going, so that when you do have an emergency, or say you do find an animal that was out in the back pasture, came in covered in ticks, they know about your operation and can help you deal with that issue with a faster response. Hey friends, we need your help. In order to help keep this show going, we need to hear back from you. Please take some time and check out our evaluation. Let us know if you like the show, and especially let us know if you've used any of the information you've gained from our show. Once again, you can reach us directly. You can call Karen at 304-234-3673. That's 304-234-3673. Or you can reach Dan at 740-695-1455. That's 740-695-1455. Thanks for listening to Extension Calling. This show is a collaboration between OSU Belmont County Extension Educator Dan Lima and WVU Ohio County Extension Agent Karen Cox. If you'd like a transcript of this show, contact us at the office. Also, let us know if you enjoy the show by ranking us on your podcast app.